On one street, there's a building full of apartments with no one living in them. Dark windows, month after month, year after year. On the next street over, there's a person sleeping in their car because they have nowhere else to go. Those two streets exist in every city in this country, side by side right now. And once you've really noticed it, you can't stop seeing it. Here's the fact that should stop you cold. America has more empty homes than it has homeless people. Not slightly more. By most measures, many times more. Enough on paper to give every single person without a home a roof, with millions of units left over. So the obvious question almost asks itself. If the homes already exist and the people who need them already exist, why are the two not together? Why does a country with millions of empty houses still have hundreds of thousands of people sleeping in cars, in tents, in doorways? The answer is not what most people assume. It isn't that we ran out of buildings. We have the buildings. The shortage was never really of housing. It's a shortage of something else entirely, something almost nobody names out loud. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly what keeps those two streets apart and why the empty homes and the people who need them are quietly kept separate, not by accident, but by design. Because it turns out an empty home is not the same thing as an available one. And the distance between those two words is where this entire crisis lives. Let's start with the number itself, because it sounds too extreme to be true until you sit with it. Across the country, millions upon millions of housing units sit vacant, homes with no one in them. At the same time, the number of people without housing on any given night runs into the hundreds of thousands. Put those two figures next to each other in the empty homes. Don't just edge out the homeless population, they dwarf it several times over. If this were a simple matching problem, a game of putting people into rooms, it would already be solved with an enormous surplus to spare. That's the part that breaks something in your brain the first time you really understand it. We are not a country that lacks shelter. We are a country with far more shelter than we have people who need it, that still cannot manage to put the two together. Here's why that matters. Because if the problem were truly a lack of buildings, the solution would be obvious and slow. Build more. But if the buildings already exist, then the real problem is something we're choosing, and choices can be unmade a great deal faster than buildings can be built. Now, before we go further, let's be honest about that number, because the honest version is actually more damning than the simple one. When people first hear that there are millions of empty homes, the pushback comes fast, and some of it is fair. Not every vacant home is usable. A big share of them are empty for perfectly ordinary reasons. A house that's for sale and between owners. An apartment being repaired between tenants. A place caught in the normal churn of people moving. Strip all of those out, the ones that are only empty for a moment, and the number does come down. But here's what gets buried in that pushback. Even after you remove every home that's just briefly between people, you're still left with an enormous stock of homes that sit empty long-term, month after month, going nowhere, serving no one. The surplus survives the honest math. So the question doesn't go away. It sharpens. Why, out of all those genuinely, chronically empty homes, can so few of them ever reach the people sleeping outside? The answer comes in layers, and we're going to walk through them one at a time, because each one tells you something about how this actually works. The first layer is the simplest, and it's about geography. The empty homes and the homeless people are, to a large degree, in different places. Think about where homes go empty and stay empty. It's often in the towns the economy left behind, places where a factory closed or an industry died, and the people moved away looking for work, leaving whole neighborhoods of houses behind them. Those homes are cheap precisely because almost nobody wants to live where the jobs disappeared. Now think about where homelessness is worst. It's concentrated in the expensive, booming cities, the exact places where the jobs went and the rents exploded. So you end up with a cruel geographic mismatch. The empty homes are sitting in the places with no opportunity, and the people without homes are stuck in the places with all of it, unable to afford a wall within 50 miles of the work that keeps them alive. You cannot solve someone's homelessness in an expensive city by pointing at an empty house in a hollowed-out town 4 states away, near no job they can get and no bus that reaches it. The homes and the need are real. They're just not in the same room. And that's only the first layer. And before anyone waves this away as purely a small-town problem, look closer at the expensive cities themselves, because the empties are there too. In the very same booming metros where people sleep in cars, you'll find brand new luxury towers that stand half dark at night, units bought as investments and never lived in, penthouses held empty by owners who visit twice a year. Whole buildings go up at the very top of the market, priced for money that's looking for a place to sit rather than for anyone who actually needs a bedroom. So it isn't only that the cheap empty homes are far away in dying towns, it's that even the expensive cities quietly generate their own emptiness at the top, rooms built for wealth instead of for people, standing dark a short walk from the tents. The mismatch isn't just between places, it's built right into the same block. If you're starting to see this differently than you did 5 minutes ago, drop a comment and tell me what clicked. I read every one, and it helps other people to know they're not the only one who finds this maddening. The second layer is where it turns from sad to infuriating, because a lot of those long-term empty homes aren't empty by accident, they're empty on purpose. Here's the thing people don't like to hear. In a lot of markets, an empty home is not a failure, it's a strategy. A home is treated in this country first as a financial asset and only second as a place for a human being to live. And once you see it that way, everything changes. Investors buy homes and sit on them, betting the price will climb, and an occupied home with a tenant is harder to sell fast, so empty can be worth more than full. Large landlords have been known to hold units off the market entirely, because flooding a city with available apartments would push rents down, and keeping some empty keeps the rest expensive. Foreign and corporate money parks itself in real estate the way it might park in gold, buying up units as a place to store wealth with no intention of anyone ever living there. And then there are the vacation homes and the second and third houses that sit dark for 11 months a year. In each of these cases, the home is doing its job perfectly. Its job just isn't to house a person. Its job is to hold or grow money. That's not a market failing to work. That's a market working exactly as it was built to, and quietly producing empty rooms and homeless people as two sides of the same coin. There's even a name for part of this: land banking, the practice of buying property and deliberately holding it idle, waiting for its value to climb, treating a building the way you'd treat a stock you're not ready to sell. And the system quietly makes it painless to do. In most places, the cost of leaving a home empty is small, a bit of tax, a little upkeep, nothing that seriously punishes an owner for keeping a person-sized space sitting vacant for years on end. Compare that to the reward, a rising price, and a tighter market that lifts the value of everything else they own. And the math points in exactly one direction: keep it empty. So owners do, at scale, entirely rationally, because we built a set of rules where holding a home back from the people who need it costs almost nothing and pays quite well. The empty home isn't a mistake someone forgot to fix. For its owner, it's often the entire point. The third layer is about condition and cost, and it's the one that sounds like an excuse until you look closer. Some of those empty buildings genuinely can't just be moved into. A house that sat abandoned for years can fall into real disrepair, and fixing it costs money. Someone has to be willing to spend. The empty office towers you hear about, the ones people say we should turn into apartments, are a perfect example. On paper, it sounds easy. In practice, converting an office building into homes is enormously expensive and complicated because offices weren't built with the plumbing, the windows, the layouts that homes require, and the cost of retrofitting them can rival building new. So the buildings sit, technically standing, practically useless, while everyone agrees in theory that something should be done. But notice what this really is. It isn't that the work is impossible. It's that no one with the money to do it has a strong enough reason to, because housing the people who need it most has never been where the profit is. The condition problem is real. But underneath it sits the same truth as everything else. We could fix these homes. We've decided over and over that it isn't worth it. The fourth layer is the one that makes people angriest once they understand it, because it's the one we did to ourselves on purpose, with laws. In most of this country, it is simply illegal to build the kind of cheap, dense, modest housing that would actually catch people before they fall. Zoning rules across huge swaths of American cities allow only single detached houses on large lots and quietly outlaw nearly everything else. The small apartment building, the backyard cottage, the tiny home, the old-style rooming house where a person could rent a single room for very little, which used to be the last rung of the ladder before the street, and which cities spent decades banning almost out of existence. There's a comment I see on this topic constantly. Some version of, we could solve this with tiny homes, but the city won't allow it. And that comment is right. In city after city, people have tried to build small and cheap and been blocked by the rules, by neighbors worried about property values, by codes written to keep exactly that kind of housing out. So we ended up in an insane position. The cheapest, most achievable housing, the kind that could put a roof over someone tonight for very little, is the kind we've made the hardest to legally build. The empty homes on one side, the people outside on the other, and a wall of our own laws standing quietly in between. And we didn't only fail to build that bottom rung, we spent decades actively tearing down what little of it we had. American cities once held a large stock of single-room occupancy hotels, cheap places where a person could rent one small room by the week for almost nothing. It was never glamorous, but it was a roof, and for a great many people, it was the last thing standing between them and the sidewalk. City after city bulldozed that housing in the name of cleaning up and modernizing, and then never replaced it with anything, erasing hundreds of thousands of the cheapest units in the entire country. So when people ask where all the affordable housing went, part of the answer is simple and grim. We demolished it on purpose and then made it illegal to ever build again. If this is connecting dots you'd felt but never quite lined up, a like helps this reach more people. Takes 1 second, and on a topic like this one, it genuinely moves it. Which brings us to the fifth layer, the one that sits underneath all the others and holds them up. It's a choice about what housing is even for. In this country, we have quietly decided that a home is an investment first and a human necessity second. And once that decision is made, everything else follows from it logically, even the cruelty. If a home is mainly a way to build and store wealth, then rising prices are good news, and rising prices require scarcity. And scarcity means you can't simply flood the market with cheap housing for the people who need it, because doing so would hurt the value of everyone who already owns. So the entire system gets tuned carefully to protect the price of housing rather than to guarantee the supply of it. Empty homes held for profit makes sense. Zoning that blocks cheap housing makes sense. Leaving conversions undone makes sense. None of it is a glitch. It's all the predictable output of a system asked to do one thing, protect the asset, when we needed it to do a completely different thing, house the people. That's not a market that broke. It's a market doing precisely what we designed it to do, and the empty rooms and the people in cars are not evidence of its failure. They're evidence of its success at the wrong goal. And before you decide the people themselves are the real obstacle here, that they'd only wreck the homes or refuse the help or fail to hold on to it, the evidence points clearly the other way. When places have actually tried the simplest possible thing, just giving people a stable home, no hoops, no conditions, no proving they deserve it first, the overwhelming majority stay housed and begin to stabilize. Because it turns out a locked door and a fixed address are the foundation a person needs before they can repair anything else in their life, not a prize they earn after they've somehow fixed everything without one. The story we tell ourselves, that these people simply couldn't handle a home if we handed them one, is mostly a comfortable myth, and it does a quiet, convenient job. It moves the blame off the empty rooms and the rules that guard them and puts it onto the people freezing right outside them. It's easier to believe someone chose the street than to admit we had the room all along and kept the door locked anyway. Let's make this concrete, because after all the layers, it's easy to lose the person at the center of it. Picture someone sleeping in their car in a city parking lot at night. Now widen the view. Within a mile of that car, there are almost certainly homes sitting empty, an investor's unit waiting to appreciate, an apartment held off the market to keep the building's rents high, a condo bought as a place to park money by someone who lives on another continent. The person in the car and the empty homes are neighbors. They share the same night, the same air, the same few blocks. One human being with nowhere to sleep, surrounded by rooms with no one to sleep in them, and a set of rules and incentives standing invisibly between them, making sure they never meet. That's not a rare freak outcome in some broken town. In city after city, that exact arrangement, the empty room and the person in the car a few hundred feet apart, is just an ordinary Tuesday night. And here's the part that should bother us most, because it proves the whole thing was a choice. Other places looked at this same problem and decided differently. Some countries and cities have made housing a right in practice, not just a slogan, giving people a stable home first before anything else, and then helping them rebuild from that stable base. Finland is the example the whole world points to, because it did the thing everyone calls impossible and came close to ending street homelessness entirely, simply by giving people homes, and its numbers have fallen year after year while much of the rest of the developed world watched theirs climb. And where they've done it seriously, it works. Homelessness drops, sometimes dramatically, and it often ends up costing the public less than leaving people on the street did, once you count the emergency rooms and the jails and the crises that stable housing prevents. So this was never a puzzle no one could solve. It's a solved problem that we specifically keep choosing not to apply, because applying it would mean treating a home as something a person is owed rather than something an investor is owed a return on. The empty homes aren't proof that the problem is too hard. They're proof that we already have more than enough and simply decided the people outside weren't the priority. Let's put one person inside all of this, because the layers only mean something when they land on a single life. Picture a man, 58, who lost a warehouse job and then his apartment inside the same year, and who now sleeps in a sedan he keeps immaculate because looking respectable is the only armor he has left. He parks on a quiet commercial street downtown, and he could tell you building by building, exactly how much emptiness surrounds him. The office tower with half its floors gone dark since the office is emptied out. The new apartment block where a third of the units have never once had a light on. The old hotel, shuttered for years, that could have held 200 people and holds pigeons instead. He is not confused about the irony of it. He lives inside that irony every single night, a man with nowhere to sleep, parked in the middle of more empty rooms than he could count, kept out of every one of them by nothing he can see or touch. He did the math a long time ago. The rooms exist. They were just never meant for someone like him. That isn't a story from some distant, broken place you'll never visit. It's playing out on a downtown street in nearly every city in America tonight. So let's go back to those two streets we started on. The building full of dark windows on one, the person in the car on the next. Now, you know what's really standing between them. Not a lack of rooms. There are rooms to spare. What stands between them is geography we won't bridge, ownership we won't challenge, conversions we won't fund, laws we won't change. And underneath all of it, a decision we made and keep remaking, that housing exists to grow money before it exists to shelter people. These aren't people the country ran out of room for. They're people the country had plenty of room for and chose, layer by layer, to keep outside anyway. And it will stay this way for a simple reason. As long as an empty home is more valuable to its owner than a housed human being is to the rest of us. As long as it's legal to hold rooms empty for profit and illegal to build them cheap for need. As long as we keep calling a housing crisis what is really a housing system working as intended, the two streets will stay exactly as far apart as they are tonight. The homes are already built. That was never the hard part. Whether we ever decide the people outside deserve to be inside them is not a question of construction or money or space. It's a question of will, and it's one we haven't answered yet. So I'll leave you with the honest version of it. If your town has more empty homes than homeless people, and it almost certainly does, then this was never really about a shortage of anything but the will to fix it. So what do you think it would actually take to change that? Drop your answer below. I read every one.